Waverman, who's Dean of the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. And he's going to provide a more comprehensive look at this kind of measurement.
Thanks for inviting a Canadian to this meeting. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to talk about something called the Connectivity Scorecard, which is research that I do that's funded by Nokia Siemens Networks. That's the commercial. What it is a way of measuring how connected telecoms, in the telecom sense, the economies are. It's very different from the ITU and the OECD indices. So let me tell you why it's different. What we do is we use a lot of economics and the methodology and the weighting. And so what we're looking at in each country is basically three actors: business, consumers, and government. We use national income accounts to figure out the weights. But we add back to GNP and to the business side the intermediate transactions that the Soviet Union used to include in GNP, which we don't do in our economies. And that's to give the basically, this index is looking at telecom networks. How do they affect productivity and economic growth? And we know that B2B transactions are a very big part of the productivity. When we look at the studies by Eric Brynjolfsson and the stuff by Dale Jorgensen, we know what kind of these weights should be. And so we use that kind of research to provide the weights. Let me turn to some results. These are the results for 2009, which are just out for a couple of weeks. And you'll notice something odd, which is the United States stands first. Now that's odd because in the OECD index, the US is 15th, and the ITU, I'm not sure where the US ranks, but not very high. And that's because we include in here a huge number of metrics which are not infrastructure. Infrastructure is basically one of the things you need for productivity and economic growth out of infrastructure, but you need the ICT skills, and you need the complementary capital and software. So we have all kinds of metrics which look at secure servers, internet hosts, enterprise software used by firms, 3G networks. We measure broadband in 4 ways. What we've heard today is basically a number of households. We look at the average speed, the presence of fiber, and the presence of 3G. So we have very different metrics. It's not really about how households or how many households are connected, but what is the speed. You'll notice in our survey, Korea stands 16th, and that's because although they have great broadband to the house, that is not the major productivity improvement use of telecom networks. Businesses in Korea really do not use the best ICT networks. They do not have the kind of skills and complementary assets that are present even in the UK, which stands fairly high, or in Canada. And the median score is 5.37. Now, the score is relative. That is, the best country, US, could get 10 if in each of the 28 subcomponents it's the first. The fact that it gets 7.7 says that compared to all other countries, it's 23% on average worse than somebody else in existing uses of telecom networks. The median is 5.37. Germany, that says that these economies on average are using half of the connectivity that other countries are presently doing. I urge you to look at the website, which I'll show at the end, is www.connectivityscorecard.org. We have a whole website on this. So here's the US. This is a Venn diagram, and basically you can see here there are 6 aggregations. The aggregations are for government, business, and consumers, and it's usage and skills and infrastructure for each of those. So there's 6 points on the Venn diagram. You can see that the US, in fact, stands very high in many of those metrics. It is slipping on the business usage and skills side. It has slipped over the last 5 years in the data we looked at, and that's something that should be considered important. And it's certainly, as you can see on the consumer infrastructure side, this is what we've been talking about mainly today, is that the U.S. really underperformed the best performing economy in that. So what are the implications? So the U.S. does well, especially in the business domain where the weighting is heavy, but it's weak in consumer infrastructure. It's falling a long way behind the leader, but the kinds of things we've heard today, or we can see in the press, that David talked about, the Verizon and Comcast, that in 2010, 2011, 2012, the U.S. could well be one of the leaders. 3G penetration is moderate still by the standards of other industrial nations. We can do kind of partial equilibrium analyses with these. So what we looked at is if the U.S. scored as high as Korea on 3G and broadband penetration, its overall score would be 8.2. Now, in all these indices, you can ask me, moving from 7.7 to 8.2, what does that mean? As with all these qualitative indices, I could say it's not the CPI. I have no goddamn idea. It's higher, but would it improve economic growth? Well, what we're doing in the next step is, in fact, embedding this index in studies of the kinds of things I've done in the past, which is the impact of telecom networks on economic growth. Because this is a better measure than penetration, which is the simple thing we economists tend to use. Finally, on the infrastructure package. Now, what we're really measuring in our study is basically, it's one of those words you hate using, the ecosystem. So for us, it's not just about infrastructure, it's about applications, it's about skills. I haven't heard a lot about applications today. I haven't heard a lot about services. So it is really the penetration of all of those things, not just broadband. Broadband by itself is not going to save the world. It's not going to lead to, at the end, when we look at this 5 years from now, we say we spent, we're spending 20 billion in Canada, you're spending 800 billion here. Have we really accomplished something? I mean, spending, $7 billion on 128,000 jobs, that's $50,000 a job. Surely we can do better than that by just giving people checks. But have we accomplished something important for society 5 years from now? That's the question. Thank you.